You know, to underscore how seldom I've ever been honored for anything, when I was thinking of what to say, I was going to start off by saying it's an honor just to be nominated, but then I realized that doesn't really make sense. But it is a true pleasure to be here. Really, it is. I want to thank Congresswoman Stefanik. In fact, when I testified in front of Congress for the very first time, Congresswoman Stefanik pulled me aside right after and said, "This is my phone number. Anytime the Harvard Jewish community is in trouble, I want you to call me." That's called leadership. And that is true of all of our honorees. Really, I do not deserve this, but I really do appreciate it. I also want to thank my beautiful friend Emma, who's somewhere in the back. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And I unfortunately have lost many friends, including roommates, people who don't want to talk to me anymore. So now more than ever, it's really nice to know that I still have at least someone. So thank you for being here, Emma. I can tell you all about, at Harvard University, all about the physical assault against a Jewish student at Harvard Business School. I can tell you all about the Israeli student who was told by her professor to leave the classroom because her nationality made others uncomfortable. I can tell you all about the undergraduate Jewish student who was spat on for wearing a kippah. I can tell you all about the Harvard employee who vandalized all of our hostage posters, writing on Kfir Bibas, "His head is still on, where is the evidence?" Writing on Noah Argamani that Jews are best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. I could tell you about how he challenged me to debate him in an underpass as to whether Jews were behind 9/11. I could tell you about how he threatened me with a machete. I could tell you about the private armed security I had outside my house for a week. I had a guy with a gun follow me to Chabad to make sure that I was okay. And perhaps the most damning indictment on the state of higher education in the United States today is that is actually not a unique story. This morning I was with three friends of mine, Bella, Ayal, and Eden. The one thing we all have in common is Bella is a Jewish student at NYU, and she is suing her university for discrimination. Ayal is a student at the University of Pennsylvania. He is suing his school for discrimination. Eden is a Jewish student at Columbia. She is suing her school for discrimination. And I am at Harvard, and I am suing my school for discrimination, but it gets better. We are the first case in American history pertaining to the civil rights violations of Jewish students on a college campus that is actually going to trial. This will set legal precedents for every single Jewish student and every American on a college campus so that they could finally have the civil rights that are guaranteed to them. But I absolutely adamantly refuse to allow our narrative and the story of the Jewish narrative, the Jewish people and Jewish students, to be defined by our ideological adversaries. So instead, I want to tell you a story. It is no secret, I spoke at the Republican convention. This is not, you don't have to clap. I actually offered to speak at the Democratic convention, but I'm still waiting to hear back. The morning of my speech, a limo picks me up from my hotel, which is a pretty cool brag, and they take me to the convention area. We do what's called a walkthrough. A walkthrough is exactly what it sounds like. The stage manager was a man by the name of Eric, and he says, "Mr. Kestenbaum, this is the podium you're going to use. That's the teleprompter to look at. This is what your hair and makeup is going to look like," which is a little odd coming from the Republicans. And he said, "Do you have any questions?" As you can tell by how I'm dressed, I don't particularly care how I look. Off the record, the speech I gave at the RNC and what was on the teleprompter were two very different things. I really did not have any questions. After 2 hours of doing this walkthrough, I turn around, I open the door to the limo, and as I'm about to enter, I turn around and actually say, "You know, Eric, I do have one question. Can you promise me, when I give my speech later tonight in front of the former president, now president-elect, in front of 30,000 people in the convention arena, in front of the millions of Americans watching at home on TV, can you promise me that when I give that speech, the camera that is televising my speech live will be able to see that I am wearing a kippah?" That is the only question I asked, because I have two friends right now at Harvard University who, in response to October 7th, have taken off their kippah. I can show you a list in my phone of hundreds of Jewish students who I have met across North America who have taken off their kippah, who have tucked in their Star of David necklace, who have ceased their involvement with Jewish life on campus. And irrespective of the substance of my speech, regardless of the words coming out of my mouth, the only thing I cared about was that those two friends and the hundreds I've made along this journey would be able to see that in the 21st century, young American Jews can and should and must be wearing their Jewish pride as loudly and publicly and confidently as ever before, bar none. And And in fact, that night, I was in what's called the Speaker's Lounge. I was eating chips with J.D. Vance, and I know this isn't, partisan, but, Tim Walz, they are a little weird. And kidding. And a woman comes to get me. She says, "Mr. Kestenbaum, follow me." And we walk down a very long corridor. We're flanked by the Secret Service on either side. We get into a very small room backstage. The room backstage is 4 people. It's myself, it's the New York politician Lee Zeldin, and it's Omer Nutra's parents. Omer Nutra, of course, is the American Jewish civilian still being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. He just celebrated his 2nd birthday in captivity. That is the 2nd birthday of his spent in captivity. I go up to his parents and I tell them there's nothing I can say and there is certainly nothing I can do. I just want to add that the courage, the bravery, and the inspiration that you have given me on an individual level is something I will never be able to repay for the rest of my life. And I left the room backstage. I cried a little. I went straight on the stage and I gave my speech. And I have been fortunate. I have been privileged. I have been blessed for the last 13, 14 months to have been with some pretty important people. I helped accompany President Trump to the Ohel of the Rebbe. I have been blessed to be given a platform on national media. I have been blessed to speak at relatively important functions. I can promise you, none of them hold a candle to the 2-minute conversation I had with Omer Nutra's parents. Because after October 7th, young American Jews have woken up and we are simply not going back to sleep. After October 7th, I bought a one-way ticket to Israel. I spent 3 weeks digging graves for soldiers who were killed in Gaza. I spent 3 weeks delivering supplies to army bases. I spent 3 weeks playing guitar and singing in hospitals for injured civilians. And they said, "Please, we've suffered enough," because I don't have a very good voice. It's true. And I did that because, yes, I wanted to get the hell out of Harvard's campus, but it is also because I have never in my life felt more attached to the land of Israel, more connected to the people of Israel, and more determined and proud of my Jewish identity, and I want to display that Jewish identity as loudly as ever. And I can assure you, that I am not accepting this award on behalf of myself. I'm accepting this award on behalf of the thousands of Jewish students across college campuses who, in response to swastikas being drawn outside of their dorms, in response to being told Zionists are not allowed to study in the library, in response to being kicked out of their classrooms, they said that they are going to display and they are going to show that Jewish identity, that commitment to the land of Israel, that commitment to the people of Israel, and yes, that commitment to truth. That's who I'm accepting this award on behalf of, and that's the people that you should all be applauding and amplifying and elevating, because they are not tomorrow's leaders, they are today's leaders. I'll close by saying one last story, and I actually noticed that the timer is not working, so I can actually keep going, so thank you. When I was in Boston's Logan Airport to take that one-way trip to Israel, I had 15 duffel bags with me, a bulletproof whatever. And as I'm checking in, I noticed to the right of me, there's roughly a dozen or so young people with Israeli flags, with American flags, blasting Hebrew music, throwing candy. And a young girl comes up to me. I had never seen her before. Oh, now it's working. Jerks. I had never seen her before. I haven't seen her since. I don't know who she is. She came up to me. She could not have been older than 15 at most. She comes up to me and she hands me an envelope and says, "Please take this." I realize what's inside the envelope. It's dozens and dozens of $100 bills. And I tell her, I cannot accept this. There's no way. I kid you not, this 15-year-old girl who I do not know wraps her arms around me and with tears running down her face says, "Please, give this to the first person you see in Israel. Please do it for me." And I can tell you that we young Jewish Americans are standing on the shoulders of giants. We are standing on the shoulders of people like that 15-year-old girl, the people like the Edens and the Ayals and the Bellas. And I'll say one last story, and then I promise I'll shut up. I was in Miami about a month ago, and because it was Miami, the average age of the audience was like deceased. And probably shouldn't have said that. This is awkward. Anyway, moving on. As I'm speaking, don't tell my mom I said that. As I'm speaking, a woman gets up and she raises her hand. And she says, I want to add something. As someone who has received death threats on an almost weekly basis by the far left and the far right, see, I'm very bipartisan, both sides want to kill me. As someone who has lost, as I mentioned, most of my friends, as someone who has had rocks thrown through their window when they were speaking, it is never a good sign when someone raises their hand in the middle of a speech and says, I just want to add something. But this woman gets up, and I kid you not, says the following. My name is Regina. I am 102 years old. I am a survivor of Majdanek. I am a survivor of Bergen-Belsen. I am a survivor, and I fought in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And she says, I want you all in this room to know we will get through this because we've gotten through it before. And she sits back down. And I am here to tell you that we will get through this because we've gotten through it before. We will be stronger as a result, we will be louder as a result, and we will be more united as a result. After October 7th, Israel began attacking our enemies by the air, by the sea, and by the land. And unfortunately, I cannot contribute to that fight. Trust me, the IDF doesn't want me. What I can contribute is to the fight and to the battleground of ideas. I can fight in the halls of Congress. I can fight in the halls of power. I can fight in academia. I can fight in the classroom. I can fight in the court of law. I can fight in the court of public opinion. I can fight in media. I can fight in social media. And that is a fight that each of you in this room, if you care about the vitality, the strength, and the security of American Jewry, if you care about the preservation of the golden age of American Jewry, I urge you and I beg you to join me, join those brave Jewish students on college campuses, join Regina, join that 15-year-old girl, and join us in that fight. Please, please, please. After October 7th, my brother lives in Israel, and he recently had a child. The child spent his first day in a bomb shelter because he was born the day that Iran launched 200 ballistic missiles into Israeli sovereignty. The child's Brit Milah, his circumcision, was a month ago. It was on October 7th. The next day, the child's father, my brother, puts on a uniform and reports to reserve duty in Lebanon. And I text my brother. I say, what's going through your mind? How are you feeling? And he tells me very succinctly, as matter of fact, what an honor, what a privilege. For the first time in 3,000 years, I have a uniform to put on. I have a country to defend. I have a people, I have a land, and I have values that are worth protecting and are worth defending. And Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, whatever your ideological or political positions happen to be, this is not merely a fight for the Jewish people. It's not merely the fight for the Jewish state. It's the fight for the heart and soul of Western civilization. And truth, emet, must never be a scarce resource. It must never be something that we have to honor individuals for. It should be a given. And truth is something that is worth defending. Truth is something that is worth safeguarding. And yes, if necessary, truth is something worth fighting for. And I am so glad that I am part of a people, I am part of a collective, I am part of a movement that every day, although it is difficult, we get up and we get to fight for truth. And we will continue to fight for that truth for as long as it takes. And I will close by saying one last message. Okay, then I promise. Honestly, the parking closes at 11, so I have to leave early anyways. I'm serious, the parking was okay. Last night at Harvard Hillel, there was an event where the former spokesman of the IDF was invited to speak at the Hillel. The response of my classmates, the response of other Harvard students, was to don masks and to chant outside of the Harvard Hillel, and I quote, "Zionists off our campus, Zionists are not welcome here." Let's be absolutely clear. That is not protected free speech. That is not anti-Zionism. That is blatant intimidation. That is blatant harassment. That is a blatant violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And regardless of any position or capacity I find myself in with the next administration, I can promise you that I and other Jewish students will do our absolute best to make sure that not one penny of American taxpayer dollars is being spent and funding anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, and anti-Westernism. And I hope that regardless of your politics, that is something we can all agree on. And I will really close by saying this, and then I promise I'll shut up. Although I did say that 3 times in a row, so. If you join me in that fight, if you join those brave college students, if you join the Reginas and the 15-year-old girl, then I promise you, you will be a living, breathing testament to the adage, to the ideal, and to the promise that Am Yisrael Chai, that not only do the Jewish people live, but the Jewish people will always live. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sit. Thank you.